Hey, are you here? See, now I like that. You're here, and you're tuned in to the Paul Leslie Hour. I like it. You know what else I like? We've got a returning guest, Chef Andy Murray of the Murray Brothers Caddyshack Restaurant. Yeah, they've got 2 locations, one in Chicago area, one in Saint Augustine, Florida. Now, if you'd like to know about the food, your host, Paul E. Leslie, can tell you what he likes. Andy Murray comes from, well, let's just say the Murray household was a full house. Yeah, Andy's parents, Edward and Lucille, had 9 children. Here we go. Ed, Brian, Nancy, Peggy, Bill, Andy, Laura, John, and Joel. Did you get all that? One more time. Ed, Brian, Nancy, Peggy, Bill, Andy, Laura, John, and Joel. Now, who in our audience is wondering what that dinner table was like? Well, Andy Murray was kind enough to drop in and talk about a few things, including his new cookbook, Eat, Drink, and Be Murray, a feast of family fun and favorites. Okay, a wonderful pun and a lengthy line of long, laughable alliterations, published by HarperCollins. The book has a foreword by Bill Murray and is getting good reviews. You'd probably like it. You know what we would like? If you subscribe to the Paul Leslie Hour YouTube channel. Doesn't cost you anything, and it helps us a bunch. So much. A lot. Now, if you want to throw us a little coin, we'd like that too. It's optional, but keep in mind the Paul Leslie Hour is made possible by viewers and listeners like you. So, we all ready for Andy Murray? Yeah, you'd like that, wouldn't you?
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How you been?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. Not bad.
That's good. You got through the pandemic all right?
I'm alive and kicking.
No, I just got over the COVID.
Oh no.
Yeah, I was like, I'd gotten all this way. I've had all the shots and then some. And I don't know. I had a book signing, and it was about 5 of us came away with COVID.
Oh no. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, well, we handled it. We dealt with it. We're all
good.
Alive.
I got it pretty early on, and I was in bed for 16 days. So I was very glad when that was over.
Well, we went to Ireland last summer. Not this last summer, the summer before last, but there were 16 of us. It was brothers and nephews and sons and a couple of friends, and we played 9 golf courses in 9 days. And then on the last day, we're supposed to play Ballybunion, and we're in Galway, and I get this phone call. Mr. Murray, yeah, a few of your party, they've tested positive for the COVID, so you'll have to be staying home in your room. And I'm like, oh, man. So I ended up 5 of us got it there. I didn't get it. And the rest of us, got the hell out of there. But the 5 stayed, and they actually had a much better time. And, once they, one brother my brother-in-law got real sick, and he was in the hospital. But everyone else kind of got over it, but they all waited till my brother-in-law was out of the hospital. But in the meantime, they went and continued playing golf. So they had a good time.
Well, it's good to talk to you again. We just jumped right into it, but I want to introduce you properly to all the people out there.
Sure.
So this is a returning guest. This time we're getting him in living color. But Andy Murray, a restaurateur, he is the author of the new cookbook, Eat, Drink, and Be Murray. Thanks so much for coming back on here. It's great to talk to you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
An honor. So what got this book going? What was the initial inspiration?
Initially, this started, I was cooking dinner at my brother Billy's house in South Carolina. I was cooking Thanksgiving dinner. And this very attractive woman came in and basically watched me all day, in and out. I thought maybe she'd help prep or wash a dish or something. No, none of that. And it ended up being Karen Duffy, Duff on MTV. And besides being beautiful, she's pretty smart. But at the end of the meal, she goes, that was the most beautiful turkey I've ever seen. I think you ought to write a cookbook. And I just said, well, I got a lot on my plate right now, and let's talk after the new year. And so she kind of followed up, and I kind of blew it off. And about 3 months later, the pandemic had started 4 months later, and I had this friend who was dealing with psychics. And she had these Zooms with psychics, so she was my friend, and I was supporting her. And so, in a matter of 10 days, 3 different psychics told me I was going to write a cookbook. And I went, "Oh, really?" And so I called back Karen Duffy. I said, "Duff, so you think we can still do this?" And she goes, "Oh, yeah. I've talked to my agent about this, and he's excited. He wants to talk to you." And in short order, he had a deal with HarperCollins for it.
Well, congratulations on the cookbook. Was there any revelation that you had as a result of writing this book?
Well, revelations, no. I confirmed that I can't read my own handwriting, and I'm a bad typist. So, I had a friend of mine that actually, she helped me do all the typing. So that was great.
So I'm in South Carolina at the moment. Where are you?
I'm in Saint Augustine, Florida right now.
Okay. So at home. I was down in Saint Augustine. It was the day before my birthday, and I stopped into the Murray Brothers Caddyshack Restaurant. And then I went, and I was staying at that hotel over there. And I had just eaten, and the girl at the front desk, I said, "So is there any good places to eat around here? I'm always looking for new places." And she said, "The Murray Brothers Caddyshack Restaurant." She said her favorite thing was the chicken and waffles. Mm-hmm. So tell us about, how did you end up in St. Augustine?
I had moved to California. I was living behind Rancho Park Golf Course in LA, which is right by the Fox Studios. And Rancho Park is the busiest golf course in America. And it was basically my backyard. I just looked over it, and it was beautiful. And I was thinking to myself, I'd been in the restaurant business, since I was 11 years old. And I'm thinking, why haven't we done a Caddyshack restaurant? It's a golf theme. It's like a no-brainer. I called my friend and my business partner, and for 35 years we've been friends and business partners, which is kind of strange in itself. But he jumped on board right away, and then I called Billy, and Billy was like, Billy got it right away. And with Billy, it was everything else was easy.
So you settled in there. You like St. Augustine?
Yeah, I do like St. Augustine. It's the summertime is kind of rough for me. I can't deal with the heat that much. It's like June 1st, somebody flips a switch and it's 100 degrees. Well, it's in South Carolina. It's the same deal. And so I go up, because we have the restaurant in Chicago, I get to be a snowbird. So I follow the seasons, and I spend the winters in Florida, and then the summers up in Chicago, which is this summer in Chicago was fabulous.
Nice. So I'm curious, would you say that there was a certain food that was the star of your childhood?
Besides sandwiches, my mother made what my father wanted, and my father was a meat and potato guy. The roast pork that's in my cookbook is a fabulous dish. That was my father's favorite dish. And we make that on a regular basis. My mom, there were 9 kids. There was Edward, Brian, Nancy, Peggy, Billy, Laura, Andy, John, Joel. And so we come home at 3:00 from school, and, everyone's like, okay, what's to eat? I find kids are still like that. They're still hungry all the time. And my mom always had like 6, 8 loaves of bread and said, here, make yourself a sandwich. So, peanut butter, mayonnaise, and lettuce was a big sandwich. It's a weird sounding sandwich. A lot of people think it's weird. It's in the cookbook too. But I can make it any day, and I'll have a brother or sister slide in next to me and take half of it.
And there's some beverages as well. I'm hoping you can tell us about the Bloody Bull.
The Bloody Bull is a fabulous hangover drink. It's kind of there's an urban legend. When I worked at Mortimer's in New York, which was basically the corner saloon for the high society folks. It was Jackie Onassis, it was Brooke Astor, it was the King of Spain would come in, Princess Margaret, Frank Sinatra, and now I forgot where I was going with this.
Mortimer's, the Bloody Bull.
So the Bloody Bull was it was a drink we served basically. People that have it at lunchtime. You never saw them drink it at dinner too much. But we used to do a brunch on Saturday and Sundays. And one day a guy came in and he came in at 11:30 in the morning and he was there till 7:30 and he had like 27 of them. And I was like, wow. And it's vodka, it's beef broth, it's whatever your Bloody Mary mix is, some extra Worcestershire, of course, and shaken with a lime, and it's a fabulous drink. Actually, with that and the chicken hash, which is also in my cookbook, it's a great hangover drink. It really is.
What would you say your beverage of choice is?
Used to be milk. I was a serious milk drinker for a long, long time. I don't know. It's coffee in the morning. There's a couple martinis at dinner, vodka, preferably. And I don't know, a lot of water.
Good deal. What would you say is the most unusual recipe that is in the Eat, Drink, and Be Murray cookbook?
Well, the peanut butter, mayonnaise, and lettuce sandwich is definitely the most unusual one. It's crazy, but there's other ones. My sister Peggy's got a recipe for baked beans in there, and her baked beans are wonderful. And it's got baked beans, it's got beans, it's got bacon, it's got brown sugar, and you layer it and you put it in the oven before you go to bed. And when you wake up, and you cook it for 8 hours, and when you wake up, the whole house just smells fabulous. It's really that's one of my favorite things there.
There's nothing like that smell of beans baking, that's for sure.
Oh no, especially waking up in bed and go, yeah, this is good.
What about any desserts in the cookbook you can tell us about?
Well, the key lime pie is something we serve at the restaurants, and I think I'll put our key lime pie against anybody's. It's what makes it different is there's a butter rum sauce that we put in between the custard and the crust, so the crust doesn't get soggy and it hardens up. So you get this piece of hard brown sugar butter thing, and it's just it really changes the whole thing. The other thing I really love in that is the chocolate pot au creme, which is basically it's a chocolate mousse, a chocolate pudding, whatever you want to call it. But I learned to make pot au cremes from a pastry chef in New York years ago, and it's still one of my favorite things in the world.
Was there somebody that you would say has taught you the most about cooking?
Well, there's multiple people. I mean, Fred White was the first guy who ever, he was a man who I worked with, and the first job I ever had, which was this corner diner. And, I remember the first day I walked in, and he looked at me and said, "Well, what do you want to eat?" And I was like, that's when I fell in love with the restaurant business, because you could eat right away. But he taught me a lot of the basics. Then, Eric Perjot, a French guy in New York, I'd gone to New York to go to the Culinary Institute. Well, I was looking at the Culinary Institute, and Billy was on Saturday Night Live at the time. I so I went to the one of the Saturday Night Live shows, and Eric and Kitty Perjot, Kitty was his wife, were doing the catering for Saturday Night Live. And he said, "Oh, indeed, you don't have to do that, do this culinary. And so you come work for me, I will teach you everything. That's the best way to learn." And so I did. He had a 2-star restaurant out on Shelter Island, which is, out by the Hamptons. And summer in the Hamptons, I mean, how bad could that be? And from him, I learned a whole lot. I fell in love with French cooking because of him. And then when the summer was over, he closed his restaurant, and I went to Demarchelier, which was owned by the fashion photographer Patrick Demarchelier. And I worked with a guy named Marcel Iatoni there, who was French-Italian, so I got a little bit of both. And then I went to Mortimer's, where I worked with Timmy Wagner and Stephen Atto, who both are my friends to this day. And, Stephen was a English guy, and he was a taskmaster, but he taught me discipline, which I didn't have at that time.
One thing about the restaurant industry, having been a veteran myself, you end up meeting really, really interesting people, not just the people you work with, but customers. And then occasionally you have people like, I can remember Earl Clue, the great guitarist, coming in, and I was very excited by that. But can you tell us any stories about your time through not just your own restaurant, but all your restaurants, somebody that you met that knocked you out?
Oh, yeah. There was Frank Sinatra was in New York, and he was playing Madison Square Garden. And Red Buttons was having a dinner party at Mortimer's for him, for a dozen people. And so we were doing rack of lamb, which is our specialty, a beautiful rack of lamb. And so they come out. Sinatra, after the show, they show up and they sit down, and all of a sudden Barbara Sinatra's at the door of the kitchen. And she goes, my husband and I, we don't eat lamb. Can you make us something else? And we said, I looked at her and I went, what would Dover sole? I've got Dover sole. And she goes, oh, that would be fabulous. So my friend John Marsh was working the fish station that night. And I said, Johnny, make me a couple of Dover soles and make them beautiful. And so dinner goes out, dessert goes out. At the end of the meal, all of a sudden, Frank Sinatra's at the door of the kitchen. And he goes, who made that fish? And I'm like, uh-oh, what did we do wrong? And he goes, that was the best piece of fish I've ever had. And he hands John Marsh a $100 bill, and he starts passing out money to everybody else in the kitchen. And it was like, whoa, this is too cool. Because, at the time I was 27. And so when he left, there was a side door of the restaurant. We all ran out and we all cheered him as he got into his limo and left.
That's awesome. What a story. Excellent. So what do you think about the publicity of doing this book? Are you comfortable with the spotlight?
I'm getting more comfortable with it. In the very beginning, I was kind of rough. I think I've gotten better. I'm not a bad storyteller, so I think that works all right. There was a time in my life where you put me in front of a camera and I was like a deer in the headlights.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was watching some of the clips, which, by the way, I want to give a shout out to a man who helped me with the research for this interview, Terry Kane, who helped a lot.
I know Terry very well.
Oh, well, he was showing me some of these clips of you could have a cooking show.
I'd like to. I got a couple of friends who would like me to do it too. So, we'll see what happens.
We'll see. It could happen. I'm hoping you can tell us about somebody. He was a past guest on this show, and he's no longer with us, but he was such a nice guy. Can you tell us a little bit about your brother, Ed Murray?
Ed. Ed passed away 2 years ago, last week. And it still hurts. It still hurts. Ed was a sweet, sweet man, and he was a hell of a golfer. He really was. He was the guy who got us into golf. He was Danny Noonan. He won the Evans Caddy Scholarship and went to Northwestern with it and became very successful because of it. He's got 3 boys that are phenomenal golfers. And he's got the widow Murray, Lisa. She's just wonderful. They all play golf. Everybody plays golf in my family, but Ed was the guy who got us going on it. He really did. I miss him terribly.
What's that?
I miss him terribly.
It was very nice. I remember him saying, he said, I wish you had told me that you were going to the restaurant. This was a couple years ago. He said, so I could have bought you lunch. I thought, wow, that's such a nice thing to say. What would you say is the best thing about family?
My family, the best thing about my family is we're all friends. We're all very tight still. It always, and I think a lot of it has to do with the dinner table. 5 nights a week we had to be at the dinner table. Sunday through Thursday, we had dinner and we all sat down. And when my mom finished cooking bringing it out, we all set the table, got everything ready, and then my dad came in, and when Mom sat down, he would carve whatever we were eating, and pass out the plates. And we learned at the dinner table how to interact with people, how to be nice to people, how to be funny with people. My dad was a very funny man with a very dry sense of humor, and if you could make him laugh, you knew you had said something pretty funny. But it was like, I had friends who used to come over just, they'd ask to come over for dinner just so they could be insulted at the dinner table. It was like, really, you want to, I spent half the dinner ducking, getting out of the way of one-liners. But, the dinner was real big, and I think it helped form us. I think my family's successful, a good part because of being at the dinner table and having to learn how to build up with some thick skin, not taking everything so personally.
I found that you can learn so much by eating with somebody. I come from a big family, nowhere near as big as yours, but you can always tell when somebody comes from a big family because of how fast they eat. Usually big family.
Yeah, well, because it could disappear off your plate real fast,
Yes.
If you're going to eat that? No, boom, it's gone. There was a lot of that. But, I wish more people would sit down and have dinner together. I really do.
Well put. Well, everybody out there, the book by Andy Murray, Eat, Drink, and Be Murray. You can get it at any bookstore, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. Thank you so much for spending time with us. It's been great to visit.
Thanks so much. It's good seeing you again. It's been too long.
Yes, sir. All right. Well.
All right. You have a Merry Christmas,
Thank you. You as well. And a Happy New Year.
All right. Take care. Thanks a lot.
All right. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
The Paul Leslie Hour is made possible by people like you. Listeners, viewers, please go to thepaulleslie.com/support, and you'll know what to do when you're there. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who contributes. Performance of The Entertainer intro song by John Primorano. And of course, this is your announcer speaking. See you next time on the Paul Leslie Hour.